everybody.
Morning.
Morning. Come on in, come on in. No, more not. That's okay. We might as well get started. It's right at 8:30. Thank you for being here. Of the over 100 events I'm sure that are happening right now, Judy and I are both very pleased that you chose to spend your morning with us. My name is Joran Oppelt, and I am the Interfaith minister and founder of the Integral Church in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm also a former marketing professional of a decade, a former professional musician of 15 years, a prayer chaplain at our local Unity campus for 2 years. I'm a father and a husband, and I do a bunch of other stuff too. A member of the St. Pete Interfaith Association in my hometown, which I was talking to. Tell me your name again, I'm sorry. Right there in the blue.
Me? What did you want to ask me?
What's your name?
Lauren.
Lauren. I was talking to Lauren because she's struggling to kind of convene her leaders in her community. And so I'm a member of that association in St. Pete, and also an ambassador of the Parliament of the World's Religions. So that's who I am. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
The mic, I don't think is on.
Because I can do this.
Better.
That's better? All right. Well, how about that?
Yes.
All right, we'll do it that way. Laura, good morning. Come on in. Front row seat, save right for you.
Okay, I'll do it.
So what you're in is a shared session, and I've had the honor of sharing my session with Judy Langford, who is going to lead us in some compassionate circling, talk a little bit about Light of the Moon circles, and after I'm done telling the story of how we started our interfaith church in our little Florida town, we might actually move the furniture a little bit and do some interactive work. So I'm looking forward to being a part of that too. So if either of those sessions are what you're looking for, you're in the right spot. Even if that isn't what you're looking for, you're still in the right spot. And we thank you for being here. So I guess I'd like to start by asking a question of all of you. I met a few of you ahead of time, but I want to ask how many of you, by show of hands, have felt restricted by labels that have been put on you? Anyone? Everyone, right? How many of you, by show of hands, come on in, come on down front if you can. How many of you have ever felt the need to leave a group, a club, a community, a church, whatever it is, because you felt you didn't fit in? Okay, that's fair. How many of you have ever been told that you weren't enough? Like that you weren't a good enough Christian, or that you weren't a devout Muslim, right? Or you just weren't Jewish enough, right? Show of hands, who has been told they weren't enough? That's about half of them. I felt that way 4 years ago. And when my labels that had been put on me, and including my self-imposed labels, started to lose their meaning, I started to question who I was. And when the beliefs that I held so dear began to appear to me as more than one at a time, I began to question what it is indeed that I believed, right? Because I have a deep, personal, daily relationship with Christ, but it's not a monogamous relationship, right? And it's funny to be here in Salt Lake City and discussing spiritual polygamy, but that is the case, right? I was not strictly Christian. I was not strictly Buddhist. And so I got tired of waiting for someone to build an interfaith, interspiritual community that I felt I could be a part of. And that's what happened 3 years ago, is that we started the Integral Church in St. Petersburg, Florida. So, before we talk about this, I know there are a handful of, by show of hands, how many people here are leaders of a faith community themselves? about half. I know there are some in the room that want to begin to lead, right? They want to start leading a community for themselves and create their own. And we're going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how we did that. First, though, I want to talk a little bit about integral spirituality, which is the map that I used, the foundation that I used to start what we did in Florida. How many have heard of integral before? Anybody? Okay, that's great. All right. Preaching to the choir then a little bit. That's great. So, integral started, in my mind anyway, with Sri Aurobindo, Swami in India in the 30s. And he, along with his partner, the mother, founded an ashram and created something called integral yoga, which was basically a yogic practice that just encompassed a complete life, a whole life, right? That our yoga practice was how we lived our life in the world, an embodied spirituality. So not long after that, here in the States, they're formed in California. They opened a school called the California Institute of Asian Studies. Has anybody heard of this school?
I did my master's there.
You got your master's? So, and shortly after, they changed the name to the California Institute of Integral Studies. And they needed teachers there to teach about Hinduism and teach about yoga and teach about the world's religions. Michael Murphy, who went on to form the Esalen Institute, got his start there, was a teacher there. Alan Watts, who went on to become Alan Watts, taught there. And the stories of his tenure there were legend. They stayed up till 4 in the morning with a bottle of wine in the basement talking about philosophy and getting credit for it. So that's the California Institute of Integral Studies. In the 90s, a man named Ken Wilber wrote a book called, a tiny little book called Sex, Ecology, and Spirituality. Some of you get that joke, it's about this thick. And it was shortly then prompted to write a shorter version called A Brief History of Everything, which is how I discovered him. It was on the Oprah Book Club list, and that's how we broke through. Al Gore and President Clinton at the time were starting to put in place integral theory in politics and business. And that's how I discovered the integral work. The point, though, for me, is that this integral spirituality is still emerging in the world, right? And for me, it was important in forming a spiritual community around these principles to be radically inclusive, right? We include the teachings of Matthew Fox, Teilhard de Chardin, Yogananda, the jazz of John Coltrane. Everything that there is a spiritual teaching in, we include, right? Because one of the tenets of integral spirituality is first, second, and third person perspectives holding the highest goodness, the most truth, the most beauty in all things. So that's what we recognize in all the world traditions, and that's what we include in our community. To the degree that you have this new mythological canon emerging, as Joseph Campbell referred to Star Wars as the new mythology of our times, there are now study groups working on Harry Potter as a sacred text. These are the stories of our age that tell the story of good and evil. So it was important for us in laying these guidelines out to have a spirituality that we're so used to being told it's either or, right? We're so ingrained in either or thing, right? It's either masculine or feminine. You're either working on your inner life or your outer life. You're working on your faith or you're working on your practice. You're either grasping or you're sitting. You can measure your life and organize it hierarchically or holarchically, but not both. You can have a spiritual focus on this life or the next life. You can be part of an ascending religion that reaches up to God, that tries to attain the divine, or you can be in a descending religion where God has breathed and inspired himself down into the world, but not both. But for us, this is a spirituality of both and this is what we encourage. It's a spirituality that we call post-modern. It's interfaith, it's pluralistic, it's interspiritual. It suggests that all perspectives are partially true. Nobody is 100% wrong. And it also uses the concepts of states and stages. States of awareness and stages of consciousness. I'm about to go over those. So this is a rendering by Alex Gray of the states of awareness, ranging from gross to subtle to causal, right? Or bodily to psychic, or bodily to dreaming to psychic to witnessing. Right? These are the states of awareness, or how we wake up. The other map we use are stages of consciousness. Who here has heard of spiral dynamics before? That's awesome. I don't have to spend a lot of time going through this. For those who don't have a familiarity with this, this is a real simple rendering, something that was premiered on the World of Psychology in the 90s by Don Beck and Chris Collin, and it maps the evolution of consciousness, individually and collectively, in a spiral. Granted, this is more of a grid, this rendering that I created, but it's a spiral. It starts with archaic, with a focus on self-interest, and swings like a pendulum over to interest for the group, and back to self-interest in ever-widening circles, including more and more perspectives. That's what the spiral looks like. So as you begin in archaic, this is a focus on survival, it's primal, instinctive. You move to tribal, and you move into the first emergence of something that is group-oriented, right? There are magical and animistic beliefs. There's a loyalty to the tribe or the community. You might see family rituals and blood oaths. Is everybody with me so far? Yeah? Moving from tribal, you move to warrior. These are color-coded. Warrior is red. This is the violent self-interest, impulsive, egocentric. Only the strong survive. Focus on domination, rebellion, kingdoms, heroes. Keep in mind this thread, this spiral happens in individuals and groups. So in societies, you can see this is pretty plain. In individuals, the red might show up as, say, the terrible twos. Or it might show up as gang violence, right? Warrior value system. You move to traditional, and you've got rules and roles, and the way we're going to survive is by following the law to a T. This is where you see, again, an expression of group interest. You've got the emergence of fundamental and traditionalist religious beliefs at blue. And then moving beyond blue, you've got modernism at orange, which emerged 300 years ago, and this is where you start to see the emergence of the scientific worldview, a focus on self-reliance, risk-taking. Life is a game. You can win it if you know the rules, this kind of thing. The positives at orange of modernism are the Enlightenment, maybe Industrial Revolution. The negatives at orange are the exploitation of capitalism or the devastation of the environment, right? These are shadows at orange. It could be the mechanistic view of life and the universe, the shadow side of science. And in religious communities, you might see the emergence of something like the prosperity gospel, right? Laura presented on this earlier at a conference that she hosted, and she said people at Orange, at the modern worldview, guess what? They can still go to the church, but it's because they think they can network there, right? And moving from orange to yellow, you've got integral or integrative. Oh no, I'm sorry, moving from orange you have green, and that's postmodern. Right, that's communitarian, egalitarian, intentional communities, a focus on world peace, multiculturalism. Green, you have a hatred of hierarchies, right? Everybody's voice is equal. A disdain for authority. You also have things like the internet, right? And then moving over to yellow, moving over to an enlightened self-interest, moving over to integral or integrative values. You've got movement from hierarchy to holarchy. maybe value-based ranking, like we talked about earlier, if something's more goodness, beauty, truth, more inclusive. You start to see the emergence of systems theory, systems thinking, third-way politics, and then to mystical, which is just emerging 30 years ago. The research says that there's only 2% of the people at turquoise on the planet, if that, and that is the truly holistic worldview. I'd say a lot of the people at this conference are probably at turquoise, right? If we wanted to wipe out all the turquoise in the world, this would be the place to do it. This is the body, mind, spirit approach to all things, right? A belief that there's a balanced and holistic system of interlocking forces. A focus on global networks, global solutions, right? The values of the whole planet, all beings, all people. And a focus on an evolving whole. And we can get there by working together. So what we decided to do in applying this to spirituality was to kind of honor the intersection of those states of awareness, how we wake up, and the stages of consciousness, how we grow up. Because everybody is at an intersection of those two spectrums at any given point, in any given moment. So what we do at Integral Church is we honor and include all those intersections. And that means everybody, all faiths, all people, regardless of belief. So, and what's been interesting too, while I have this up, is in the messaging. I know that some of you are leaders of community or want to start leading and growing a community. What's interesting to me is that when we've used language from yellow, we've attracted orange. Right? We attract people who are interested in improving themselves, who have sometimes a dogmatic view of science, but we've used yellow language, so we've attracted them. And when we've shifted to use language from turquoise, we've attracted the purple, right? We've attracted the New Agers. So I find it interesting that the spiral actually, in application, has worked in the marketing side as well. And that's my marketing hat of a decade going, oh, okay, well, let's switch that message out, get those people in the door. So in starting this church, I imagine, for some of you, as it was for me, there's a lot of sleepless nights, there's a lot of nagging in the back of your mind, there's a lot of feeling of, I'm the only one in the world who feels this way. There's a fear around trying to go out on your own and launch something that's never been done. And then there was the moment where I just got up in the middle of the night and I wrote the letter. I found the courage to invite any of my friends and family, because if you've had, how many of you are parents? Okay. How many of you lost or found new friends when you became parents? Yeah. Starting your own religion is like that. So I had the courage to write the letter and say, guess what, guys? This is what I'm doing. Who wants to come? Right? Who wants to come along on this ride with me? I don't know what it's going to be, but I invite you. Wrote the letter, bought the domain name. That was it. There were about 10 of us that met in my living room the first time. Met in a circle in the living room. There was a huge focus on sustainability, on urban farming. A lot of them wanted to start a commune. They wanted to unplug. They wanted to get away. And I was like, that's not where I'm at. I want to be in the city. I want to be bringing this to the people, right? This is about engaging in life, bringing your spiritual practice to your daily life. And I want to grow a community around that. So eventually we settled on a board of directors, and for this group of people who had for so long squarely rejected anything that was authoritarian or anything to do with the church, this was a difficult move, right? This took a lot of courage on everybody's part. But armed with these maps and these states and stages and basic kind of principles and structured beliefs, we did it. We decided to build something that we thought we might be attracted to, that we might eventually want to be a part of. We wanted a religion that was created in the age of the internet. right? That acknowledged the dawn of democracy, but was also focused on an interspiritual view of the future. That was our goal. And of course the questions came up, well, can interspirituality be its own religion? Can it be its own faith? Can pluralism be its own practice? How does that work? What are we going to do? What are the meetings going to be like? And the lists began. What do we like about religion? Right? What good has religion done in the world? And then the other list began. What do we hate about religion? What are the bad things that religion has done? And my favorite question, do we have to call it a church?
Yeah.
I still get it, 3 years later. Why is it called a church? To some, the word interfaith church it's cognitive dissonance. It doesn't make sense. But it was the word that most closely resembled the body of people doing the work in the world and the community and the connectedness that we wanted to see. And luckily it's caught on. And what's funny is the spiral dynamics model, you know, things like, can interspirituality be its own religion? Can pluralism be its own practice? Those are questions from what? From yellow, from integral or integrative values, right? What do we like about religion? Where did those answers come from? Green, we like the community, we like to meet the people, we like the potlucks, we like the food drives, right? We like the eye contact, the intersubjective connectedness. And orange, we like the self-improvement, we like the self-empowerment. That's what we like about religion. Guess what we don't like about religion? Anybody? Red, we don't like wars, we don't like violence. What else?
Too much structure.
Structure, we don't like blue. We don't like being told what to think. We don't like following the law. And then do we really have to call it a church? Where's that come from?
Oh, that's green.
That's green, right? That's anti-hierarchy, anti-authority. There were some things that we all agreed on, and that was that we wanted to serve. That was primary. We wanted to get out in the community as soon as possible as a group and start doing work. So we started simple. We did the MS walk, we ran the color run, the 5K, we did a feeding children everywhere event, we did the we still volunteer with Current. They do the Laundry Love Project. Who's heard of the Laundry Love Project? You show up and you feed quarters into the laundromat so that families can do their laundry for free all day. They also do something called Affordable Christmas, which gives disadvantaged families the opportunity to shop for Christmas items around the holidays. You get a $100 bike for like $10. It maintains the dignity of the item. They were able to purchase the item, right? Nobody came into the neighborhood and gave them a gift. They came to the Y and bought it themselves. So we aligned ourselves with organizations who were, you know, comprehensively the values we wanted to represent and wanted to embody. The other thing that was important is ritual. And this was something I was already involved in. I was performing marriages and memorial services and performing baby naming ceremonies. And for my children, we did something called a baptism, where we put my daughter in the kitchen sink and had a ceremony for her. Celebrated the solstice and the equinox, the burning bowl on New Year's. This was ingrained in our life already. We wanted to share our practices with our friends, with our family, with our community. Another thing, the top picture you'll see is a thing we call the fatherhood rite. And this is something that I've also been doing for 10 years, where we take a new dad in the community out in nature, and it's a rite of passage for new fathers where we circle him and we pour our wisdom into him. We tell him the things that we wish we had been told when we became fathers. It's impactful, it's beautiful. And we also knew it was important to go out and connect with the community, with people who are like-minded, align ourselves with the leaders who were living this life. Barbara Marks Hubbard at the conference that Laura hosted, I got to meet her and hand her the church handbook, and she was like, this is amazing, gave me a testimonial for the book. Amazing. This picture was taken 2 days ago. Reverend Matthew Fox led the Cosmic Mass, and I was asked to puppeteer the Green Man in the Cosmic Mass, and the fire marshal was outside telling nobody else can come in. It was amazing. Friday fed me You know, these people are leaders of spirituality, and these are the people that we could get behind. So getting out and meeting them, we knew was going to be important. Our very first event, who here has heard of Lynn McTaggart? Okay, wrote The Bond, wrote The Field. Our very first event that our logo was ever a part of, we brought her to Tampa as a speaker, and she launched the Intention Project in Tampa Bay. So we knew that the culture was out there already. Another event that we knew that we could bring into the fold was an event that we've been doing for 10 years already, Alchemy Fest, a huge family-friendly arts and music community festival that started as my daughter's birthday 10 years ago with 50 people and has grown. In 2008, we saw like 20 vendors, food trucks, music, and then the 10th end, which was last year, we saw 30 vendors. This event continues to grow. Right? Continues to get sponsorship and support from the community because there are families out there, right? Fans of the music and the art and the culture in St. Petersburg who can get close to this without feeling like they're supporting any specific church or religion. This is just for the community. So, why I'm here, why I got paired with Judy, is because we talked long and hard about how we would gather, how we would meet. We didn't want it to be top-down, one-to-many. We didn't want somebody at the front at a pulpit telling us a story, right? We wanted something that was postmodern, that was radically inclusive, that we felt we were building together. We decided to meet in circles. There's a stigma attached to circles. Yes, I see a lot of head nodding. And probably the Wiccans in the audience can probably attest to this the most, right? It looks like you're having a seance. They want to burn you at the stake if they see you meeting in a circle. It looks like maybe it's a therapy group. Maybe I'm going to be forced to say something that's going to make me uncomfortable. I don't want to meet in a circle, right? Or the dreaded drum circle. The hippies at the drum circle, right? All these social stigmas attached to meeting in circles. But that was our way of expressing it, right? It's not a shift from masculine to feminine. There's always masculine energy within the circle. It's a shift from modern to postmodern. It represents, for me, I like to put it in technological terms, right? It's no longer the client-server relationship. It's no longer a serial communication. It's now peer-to-peer, right? So if Napster can do it, why can't religion do it? The challenge we've found, for those of you starting communities of your own or trying to test this model, is that there is no back pew in a circle. Right? For those of you in the back, you're like, I'm going to check this out. I might dip out. I'm here to, Eventually you come back, you move up to the middle row, eventually you move to the front row, eventually you join the choir, eventually you start a small group, whatever that looks like, right? You move your way to the front. You can't do that in a circle. It's come on in, sit down. So that's been fun to watch people engage in that. We meet outside. We meet outside at a park in St. Petersburg, and the very first time we did it, I thought, if it's just going to be me, that's fine. If it's me and singing bowl and some incense, and I do some meditation and some reading and some prayer work, great. My wife wants to join me, and we have a spiritual conversation, and we connect, get into that interpersonal space, then great, even better. But 5 people showed up. And then the next time, 8 people showed up. And then the next time, 10. So, and this is actually, the picture on the top left is the little metal pail you see there. It's a picture of the stones that we collect. And this is part of our ritual that we do. It's called the offering of the stones, and when you bring your stone to the circle that you've been carrying around in your pocket or you've brought from wherever, that's like a talking stick, that's your opportunity to share. Or for you use, it's like the joys and concerns, right? It's your opportunity to say what you're celebrating that month or what you're unburdening yourself. You need prayer, meditation support from the group. That collection has grown to this tricked out wooden window box. You can imagine 3 years later we have a lot of rocks, we have a lot of stones, and I'm the one that's got to schlep it to the park every day. So, we have musical guests outside as part of the experience. Everything from acoustic folk to a cappella to chanting to mantras We end each service with a guided meditation. We have really reached out to the yoga and meditation teacher community in this way because we try to feature somebody new each time. So there's been a lot of word of mouth and support from that community. When the word has gotten around to what we're doing outside and people start talking about it, and then they show up and they love it. The decision was made a year ago to do something for people that was not on a Sunday, right? The people just wouldn't do Sunday morning, couldn't get up on Sunday morning, or didn't want to go outside. They just preferred an indoor experience. Oh, well, I'm sorry, I skipped the slide. This is how our gatherings have continued to grow over the years, right? You can see the kind of natural growth. Over the last 3 years, I've always taken a panoramic shot, so it's been interesting to see these things get wider and wider every time. But we decided to do something indoors, and the local UCC chapel gifted us access to their chapel. So Thursday night we do an indoor service that allows the musicians to plug in, it allows for the sound to bounce off the walls, the singing bowls and the chanting to take on a different experience, right? The services in the chapel, again, continue to grow. So a new event that we've got, this is the second annual that we just celebrated, Interfaith Week. We just did it in September. The mayor of St. Petersburg is a Jewish mayor married to a Catholic. His wife is Catholic. He's a Jewish mayor on the majority Christian city council. I ran into him in the line at Best Buy, and I said, I have this idea. Interfaith Week, St. Petersburg. And he said, I am in. I will support it in any way possible. So we've had his blessing and his proclamation for 2 years in a row. And this year, doubled attendance and doubled the participation, doubled the amount of panels and workshops that were submitted. And next year will be even bigger and better. And I hope that some of the speakers that I've networked with here at this event will be our keynotes at that event. So Interfaith Week, again, continues to grow. Interfaith Week, I have to say, was especially cool to see the imams and the pastors and the rabbis and the Buddhists and the doctors and the scholars and the academics, everybody convening in rooms and having conversations with one another that they normally wouldn't have. Right? Breaking bread together, planning together for solutions, either immediate solutions in the community or just overall, let's bridge the divide between these individuals or these communities. I'll take questions at one. We'll see.
I'm just curious where you did it.
Oh, all over St. Pete. So all the campuses opened up their churches and synagogues and temples and had an open house that week. Some went so far as to provide specific program for that week, like the UU Church did a special interfaith message that week. And then the panels and workshops were hosted everywhere from the Shambhala Meditation Center to the Shuffleboard Club had a workshop on sustainable happiness, so everybody got involved. So, Interfaith Week, again, here they are. Here are all the leaders. Here's Ruth Broyd Sharon and Cynthia Lucas, who were presenters here. They came and were our keynotes for 2015. There's the mayor, there's Rick Kreisman, and there's the graphic recording that we did of the event. It's huge, 40 by 60 piece that captured in visual notes all the concepts and ideas and imagery and mantras and icons, everything that emerged, pull quotes from all the panels and workshops on this one graphic, and I've got posters of that. So Interfaith Week, again, continues to grow. So we are, I think, has anybody heard of Stephen Prothero? He's a religion professor in Boston. Okay. His idea is that the world religions provide a specific solution, a specific human solution for a specific human problem. In the instance of Christianity, the problem is sin. The solution is salvation. In Buddhism, the problem is suffering. The solution is awakening to that suffering. Right? In Judaism, the problem is exile. The solution is return, either to source or to God or to Israel. Exile and return. So each of these religions, he says, have a very specific solution to the problem. If for me, for us, in starting this church, it was like, okay, well, this is like Trivial Pursuit, right? I can't just have one solution to one problem. I need all solutions to all problems, right? There's that polygamy again. So I don't know, it's 3 years going. It's 3 years in the road. I don't know what the specific problem solution is for Integral Church. Maybe that's yet to emerge. Maybe the problem is fragmentation and the solution is integration. Maybe the problem is illiteracy and the solution is knowledge, or even metanoia. One of my favorite words is, the changing of your mind, the changing of your heart through seeing, the ability to see the big picture. Maybe that's the solution for integral or integrative spirituality. But many religions have a spectrum ranging from that fundamental traditionalist belief all the way up to mystical, right? Radical, more inclusive beliefs. In Christianity, it's what? Gnosticism. In Judaism, it's what? Kabbalah. In Islam, it's Sufism. Few religious institutions have structures built to carry these people, to allow for unfolding, for evolution within their community. So they must continue to build higher and more inclusive structures, right? To help these people who are simply transcending and including their own beliefs, who still identify as followers of Islam or as Christian. And what about the Sufi Kabbalists, right? What about the Gnostic Vedantists? That may sound ridiculous, but those people are out there too. Where are they to go? So Integral Church will continue to kind of be a vessel, as people unfold and blossom out of these faiths. We will continue to be there to catch them, to provide a service, a community, a place to call home, and to support the spiritual path of the interspiritual initiate. That may be our goal. But individually and collectively and within and without, and in faith and in practice, Integral Church is truly a community unfolding. That's what we are. Are there any questions for me about Integral Church? Brian?
I'm just wondering about the language that you use when you're gathered for your services. How do you frame your terminology and stuff?
Yeah, we have a real focused emphasis on pluralism as opposed to syncretism. So I'm not a fan of communities that'll put native spiritual language and wisdom with Christian scripture and Buddhist, teachings and kind of put it in a blender and now it's this new thing. We move from reading of Christian scripture to calling in the four corners to, We're definitely honoring each tradition that we have in service. And those traditions change each time. We're honoring it. If we have an imam as a guest speaker, guess what? We're talking about Ramadan. We're talking about fasting. We're talking about the 5 pillars. So it's truly inclusive of all faiths and respectful of those.
Can we have a look at your guidebook or handbook that you referenced?
You can. It's on our website. I was told that it was kind of insider baseball and that it shouldn't be the first thing people see, so I've stopped kind of carrying it with me to services and things, but it's on our website. If you click on events and gatherings, or you can find it on the website. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a free download. It's a 60-page book. Anyone else in the back?
Yeah, follow up on this in terms of mythology or story. Do you have a pluralistic story? How do you? It seems to me like you have an emerging myth here.
I tell you what, the first meetings in my living room when there were 10 of us sitting around and telling our personal stories, there was an emerging shared mythology happening then. I think that, whether it originates with us or not, somebody will eventually tell the story of these communities forming, because I tell you, I've met so many of them here this weekend. We're not alone. It's happening everywhere. So I think that that's still emerging. Yeah, Laura?
Do they self-identify at all? Would they call themselves humanists? Like the people down in Aurora? Are they?
It's funny, I had a conversation
Or
with
do
somebody
most of
yesterday
them
about
say,
that.
I'm a Christian who's seeking a more mystical experience?
I think there's both.
Okay.
I think, with the colors, I think in humanism you're going to see somebody more in orange, and with the mystics you're going to see yellow and turquoise. But I think that humanism being a very specific thing, that's a thing. right? Like that's a system. They have their own organization, their own website. That's what, you know. So you can refer to yourself as a follower of humanistic philosophy, or you can say I'm a humanist. I self-identify as I'm a card-carrying member of the. You know what I mean? But we don't get many humanists in the circle. To answer your question directly.
Just that humans themselves are evolving, or spiritual evolution is the next great leap. And that's sort of how Dan would explain, and they're definitely not first here. So I was just curious, or if there's new language emerging. Are you hearing a new
Slowly, yeah. In fact, I've been asked, like, what do we call ourselves? Right? Because anybody have a Meetup account, meetup.com?
Yes.
You have to call yourself something, right? You have to call yourself a person or a believer or a follower or a whatever, right? Like, what is the name for a person who's a member of your community? We don't have that yet. You know, you're not an integralist or an evolutionary or, you know, all those terms apply.
Yeah.
We haven't been forced to choose. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Really interesting. I came in a bit late, so maybe you covered it, but I was wondering why, you know, there are other types of organizations like Unitarians or some of the Sufi orders that try to do the same thing, and I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's a good question.
What was it? Did you feel like even those other approaches didn't quite meet the need, or was it because there wasn't anything in the area?
There definitely wasn't anything in the area. Keep in mind, we're in Florida. So you've got, you know, you're limited to the mileage, you know, across the width of that state. There may very well be something in Gainesville that I would have loved to have traveled to, or something in Key West that I would have loved to have traveled to, but there was nothing in the immediate area that served my needs or any of the needs of the people that I was talking to. So I'm sure, and again, visiting tonight, I'm seeing that, you know, these communities are all over.
I want to jump on her question. I'm sorry.
3 minutes I've got.
Okay.
One more, and then one more after
Did you
Laura.
have a UU church? Because we tried a UU church
We
and
do
that did
have
not.
a UU church, yes.
Okay, so these people did not like UU. The people were coming to you because we're finding, we thought
Well,
the UU church would work and it didn't.
Like, it might be a reach. I mean, there's people that do both.
Oh,
You know, it's a different experience. You know, for me personally, I couldn't be a member of UU because, well,
What's you?
Unitarian Universalism.
Oh, wow.
It has,
Political standpoint.
right, and yeah, they're very political, very socially active. But the worship experience of the local UU church is very one-dimensional. It's sitting in the pews and it's singing from the hymnal and sitting back down and that, which was that so many people had burned on and didn't want to be part of. So even if we were close creedally, right, or dogmatically, then we were distant in the experience of worship that we want. One more question? Anybody? Ken?
Do the participants primarily have this as their one community, or do you also have people who go to a church or temple or something on you know, as a regular thing as well?
I would say 75% of our community, like this, they call this their church. This is their church. But 25%, yeah, could go to any community and do. You know, we meet bi-weekly, so they could be going on Saturday and off Sundays to other communities because they need to be constantly fed. You know, being 3 years old and pulling these services and the program and the music and the teaching and the guest speaker and the meditation together, it's a lot of work. So even though we're doing these kind of, you know, third Sunday, first Thursday, etc., there's still an event every week. So until we shift, and I can delegate some of that to the leadership, and we can move to weekly Sundays, weekly Thursdays, then I think that we'll see a huge leap, right? Because we're offering that for them more often. And I think we'll see more attendance when we're able to do that. And I look forward to that. That'll be our plan for 2016 is to, you know, get that leadership assigned to that task.
With this model being circular, do you see a limit to attendance?
Definitely. Especially with the offering of the stones, you know, which we're going to experience right now as we move our chairs. You're going to see that not everybody will have the time to share, right? So when we scale up to, say, 50 people coming, guess what? We're going to have to build a new service that may be a little more top-down, that may move to a sanctuary where we can have an electric band. It may resemble more of a contemporary worship service. But for now, this experience will stay the same. Right, and we would build onto with a separate experience or a separate service for the people who want something larger. And that's it. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. I have cards and brochures.